Okay, so could you tell your name, please?
Sure. My maiden name is Esper, so it's Jane Esper, and my married name is Vogel, so Jane Esper Vogel. My connection with Innisfree is back to when I was a junior at U of M in Ann Arbor. Because I guess it would have been sophomore year. There was a trip up here to go cross-country skiing. And that winter, I just fell in love with Innisfree. And I think I talked to Gus Leinbach that winter about being on staff the following summer. So it might be a year off. I think it was freshman year, and I was up here that summer. It doesn't matter. It was the U of M years. So I came up as a camp counselor at Innisfree. And it's when Gus and Paula were still running the camp, still lived in the white farmhouse. Eric was around, so I knew of Eric as Gus's son. But Gus was in his prime at that camp. He told camp stories around that big stone fireplace in the lodge. And he just had all of us mesmerized with his stories. I remember the big kitchen. I had one of the cabins, one of the girl cabins. So I was a camp counselor, and I had one of the girl cabins down by the lake, and it was the 8-year-olds, and they were experimenting with, can 8-year-olds successfully come to camp? And what we learned was that in general, no, it's a little young. But the kids who did just great were those who had an older sibling. An older brother and sister in camp were fine. I remember taking the 8-year-olds to an overnight camp, and Paula wasn't too keen on the idea because I guess it cost some money. But I took the 8-year-olds on an overnight camping trip by Sleeping Bear Dunes, the Devil's Slide at...
The group camp.
The group camp. Is that the north end?
Of what? Of the dunes? It's toward the northern end. It's north of the dune climb, yes.
North of the dune climb is what I'm thinking. But what else do I remember? I loved the tall stairs that went down to the lake. And if I remember, that shore was a little bit stony. I remember there was another camp counselor that summer who was a drummer. And the Leinbachs had somehow adopted him because if I remember, they had really connected with lots of groups in the Detroit area, maybe a little underserved, making the camp available to them. And I think this one particular camp counselor was of the same vintage. And I think Paula and Gus had kind of adopted him, and he was a very accomplished drummer. And they had given him one of the cabins, and you could just hear him wailing away on these drums. And you could tell whatever it is he needed to work through, get out of his system, him wailing on those drums, thank God with a little skill, was his means of getting it out. I remember as a counselor, that was the year there was a new book, was all the rage. It was about cooperative games. And we had so many games we played with the kids that was all about cooperation. It wasn't so much about a winner and a loser. Yeah. I remember taking the kids up to Pyramid Point, keeping them out of the poison ivy. Yeah. And it's always been, although we're really kind of nested, our history family-wise up here is down at Platte Lake. I feel like I got this nice connection. And even as it's morphed into the Leelanau Outdoor Center. And a nice connection is my daughter now, who is a 7th grader at a school down in Ann Arbor. The big highlight of 7th grade is called the ship trip. And the kids come up, and it's kind of an outdoor education 3-day trip. And they spend 2 nights at what I still think of as Innisfree, but now the Leelanau Outdoor Center. So we were up here, and I chaperoned on that trip because I just really wanted to be part of it. And it felt so similar to what it had felt like many years ago. And I came away feeling really pleased that the camp had the same, I mean, the word for me was authenticity. It felt like it had a really similar connection. And although this doesn't have anything to do with Gus, a story that I've told my girls about that camp, and they totally remember. It's like a figure of their childhood. It's the chicken pot pie story. And I like wove this whole elaborate tale about a ship coming through the straits and yet another stormy night, and the ship hits the rocks, and the ship had a whole cargo of frozen chicken pot pies, all in little white boxes, and the ship was a wreck. just completely destroyed in the store. And all the pies got loose. And the big crates they were in were just pummeled in the waves. And so we got up after the storm and came down to the beach, and it was covered in little white boxes, all with these still somewhat frozen chicken pot pies. And we gathered them all up, and we took them to the kitchen, and the cook made chicken pot pies for lunch that day.
No.
And various versions of that basic storyline have evolved over the years, and this is my daughter Anna. Claire and Anna totally get the chicken pot pie story. Anna, you have to say hi.
I was so surprised.
I was just talking about the chicken pot pie story.
Oh yeah, we couldn't believe that wasn't true. I mean,
just-
like, come on.
I just fessed up that it wasn't a true
Because
story.
every hike we ever went up on here, she'd always tell the chicken pot pie story. And then a few days ago, I asked, like, Mom, tell the chicken pot pie story again. I'm like, oh yeah, that story. And then, like, that's just as real. I'm like, no, it's not real. I was just so surprised. I mean, how can that not be
You
real?
know,
Staple for a life.
I debated on telling you if it was real or not, but it just seemed like, Santa Claus is really a good spirit with us. The Easter Bunny, good at heart.
Yeah.
The chicken pot pie story is, I guess, about sharing good food.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Does it kind of make you worry what else she's been telling you all your life?
No,
Whether
yeah, Santa Claus wasn't real like 3 years ago.
Gave it up on Santa Claus.
But I don't know. We get to be on TV now?
Yeah, I
You're
was just
famous.
I was
Yay.
just telling them all about the summer I spent at Innisfree. It was such a great
Yeah, I
summer.
went there for, we went to the camp that's now, at Door Center. Apparently, according to Mom, it was once Camp Innisfree, and for store camp, or ship trip, it was quite fun. Without the cabins, they were really old. Like, they weren't even air conditioned, which is kind of nice.
They were still the
They were
original
really
cabins,
like the
which
original
was just
cabins.
so
They were
cool to
very
see.
nice.
They've been well maintained over
Except
the
we
years.
found some ants in the cereal. But that's
You found what?
we found some ants in the cereal.
Oh.
Ants in the cereal. That would do it.
Okay.
And so now, in a similar vein, with the girls this age, these last few summers, we've been really focused on the national parks and doing these various trips. So we were just in Maine, Acadia, Maine this summer, and learned about the Youth in Park, YIP, I understand is the acronym. And so Claire's really pretty interested in looking at that kind of internship program for the park.
Yeah,
Good.
no, us too.
Still a couple years. I mean, it's still probably 2 or 3, at least 2 summers away. But a nice way to maintain a connection with the parks up here.
Good.
So I think that's kind of in our future. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Great. Thank you.